Our top stories tonight. Niue government budget passed with a reduced deficit to $12.8 million. New Zealand Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Honourable Winston Peters to visit Niue next Wednesday. And Tony Edwards is appointed to the International Powerlifting Federation Board. Good evening and welcome to our BCN News Bulletin. I'm Mersa Takala. A special whakalofa atu to our viewers from across the region, thanks to our partners at Pacifica TV. Leading our bulletin tonight, after a whole day of debate yesterday, the Niue Assembly passed the Appropriation Bill 2024 to 2025 for the government's budget. Minister of Finance Crossley Tatui presented amendments to the bill, introducing it for the second reading. The changes in the second reading means that the original deficit of $15.9 million presented in the first reading has now dropped to $12.8 million. Here's Esther Pavihi with more.
The Minister of Finance, Crossley Tatui, yesterday morning on the second reading of the Appropriations Bill, presented amendments to the bill with changes to the revenue figure increased by $4.4 million and increased the expenditure budget by $1.3 million. The increase in revenue is attributed to an additional $2.2 million from the New Zealand government, $1.2 million from the FFA or Foreign Fisheries Agency with the US treaty payments, and $570,000 additional revenue expected to be collected from customs. The additional $1.3 million expenditure with $720,000 towards roading project and $450,000 towards the renewable energy project. There were some robust interventions initially after the minister presented the amendments, with some members questioning the legality of amending the figures from the first reading. However, Speaker Hima Douglas made his ruling that in accordance with the law, the Minister of Finance can make amendments to the Appropriations Bill during the second reading. Meanwhile, the interim chair of the Public Accounts Committee, Richie Mautama, presented the committee's report to the whānau. Mautama informed the House that the committee felt at the end of the consultations with all government ministries and heads of government agencies and statutory organisations that there seems to be a disconnect between those government agencies. The committee recommended that this be addressed so that the heads of government agencies and statutory organisations are well aware of what their respective agencies are doing. The Assembly finally passed the budget after 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Esther Pavihi for BCN News.
This is week 9 of the 13-week stand-down period for public meetings on the 4 proposed constitutional amendment bills. BCN News understands that the Constitution Review Committee met with the village of La Kepa on Sunday last week. One of the questions raised at the meeting was about the roles of the members assisting ministers, or MEMS. The villagers wanted to know what assurance are there that the Civil List Act would be amended to remove the provision for MEMS. This question was also raised by the member from Hakupu, Richie Mautama, during the second reading of the bills in May, asking what the government will do with the members assisting ministers, given the amendment bill to increase the cabinet from 4 to 6. Since then, there has been no confirmation from the government that the civil list will be amended to remove the requirements for MEMS. The village of Vaea will be meeting with the Constitution Review Committee on Sunday, 7th July. There are 4 weeks to go before the bills are returned for the third reading next month. New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Honourable Winston Peters will be arriving on his first official visit to Niue next Wednesday. The delegation will include the Minister for Police, Honourable Mark Mitchell, Foreign Affairs Trade and Defence Committee Chair, Opposition Associate Spokesperson for Foreign Affairs Team van der Molen, Foreign Affairs Trade and Defence Committee Member Damien O'Connor, Chair of the Labour Pacific Caucus Honourable Jenny Salesa, and Foreign Affairs Trade and Defence Committee Member of the Parliament for Greens Party Tenau Tuiono. Minister Peters and his delegation will spend 3 days on the island, visiting some of the New Zealand-funded projects, including the Niue 4O Hospital and Niue High School. Minister Peters will also be shown the site of the renewable energy project that New Zealand will fund to the tune of $20 million, announced during Prime Minister Luxon's visit earlier this month. Honourable Winston Peters has visited Niue several times, including his visit in March 2006 for the official opening of the Niue 4O Hospital. His last visit to Niue was in 2015 for the Niue RSA commemorating 100 years of the Anzac. Auckland University over the past few years conducted research that was focused on climate-related displacements and relocations that are already happening in the Pacific. Dr. Christina Newport is part of this climate mobility research and is here on her third visit to share the findings of the research with the community and those who took part in the research. BCN News spoke with Dr. Newport yesterday. Understanding patterns of future climate migration of internal and cross-border, as well as the social and economic impacts on Pacific Island countries, is a reality that most island nations will deal with in the coming years. Dr. Christina Newport is back to present her findings on the outcome of the climate mobility research.
One of the main findings is that communities wish to stay where they are. They have no real aspirations to move. For any reason other than, in addition to the impacts of climate change. Yes, certainly communities, members move for employment, for work, but the idea that they may be compelled to move because of climate change is something that they have concerns about.
The research focused on several communities on the island, including Vaea and the west coast communities of Makefu, Tuapa, Avasele, and Alofi South.
In Vaea, they also have a community that are from Tuvalu, and so they have a unique story to tell about what are the kind of factors that you need to take account of when a community comes to you from another place. And so there's lots to be learnt from Vaea's experience. And of course, Vaea has had its own experience from moving from Fesio, where they were on the beach, and moved further inland due to a medical outbreak a few years ago, back in the 1950s, I think it was. And so, they have their own stories to tell about what that meant for them as a community to relocate from their original place to somewhere else within their lands.
17 communities from 7 Pacific Island nations, including Niue, were part of the research, highlighting the well-being and livelihoods in these areas challenged by climate change in various ways depending on the nature of the environments and patterns of mobility.
There's lots that policymakers can learn from those community experiences, and that's really been the objective of the research, is to gather communities' experiences and their insights and be able to use that to inform policy making and decision making.
The research was funded by New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. PACER Plus workshop on the feasibility study deployment of the interface between the customs and postal system was held last week in Alofi. One of the objectives of the one-day session was to hold a technical discussion about the options to interface the IT systems of the Niue Post and Niue Customs. PACER Plus Trade-in Services and Investment Advisor Olivia Poncom shares more on this.
So the workshop yesterday was a feasibility study to look at the interface between the customs system and the postal system to make trade faster, efficient and transparent, and to remove the manual process and to automate the process between the customs agency and the postal agencies.
The project has been aided with the guidance from the Universal Postal Union aimed at transforming and streamlining trade processes, promoting efficiency and transparency across the Pacific.
To discuss with several stakeholders to prepare a feasibility study on the interfacing, rolling out an interface between the postal system and the customs systems. In fact, to improve the e-commerce.
Olivia says this pilot project, if successful, the Pacific will be the first in the world to use this harmonized system.
And Niue has been really open about being part of this pilot along with Samoa to really make the Pacific a region that will be the first region to use this harmonized system anywhere in the world.
The success of this initiative in Niue will serve as a blueprint for rolling out similar systems across the PACER Plus countries, ensuring tailored solutions that meet each nation's unique needs. BCN News had an opportunity to speak to Niue Powerlifting Federation President Tony Edwards via Zoom from Auckland this week. Edwards shared more on his recent appointment as part of the Executive Committee to the International Powerlifting Federation Board as the Oceania Regional Powerlifting Representative. Tony Edwards said it was an honor and a privilege as he became the first Niuean and Pacific Islander to be appointed to the International Powerlifting Federation Board in Europe last week. With his new appointment, Edwards will now represent 14 Pacific member countries from the Oceania region to the IPF board.
Certainly is a privilege and honor to sit on the executive board of the International Powerlifting. And I guess the importance of this is about having a voice, in the board. and especially from the Oceania. So, you know, now I can say that the 14 members of the Oceania has a voice in the biggest international sport of powerlifting.
Edwards explained some areas of focus in his new executive committee role at the IPF board.
Firstly, it's try and develop the sport in terms of equipment. Major talks around Eleco equipment, how do they support the Pacific? So the discussions that I had last week with International Powerlifting is actually getting these equipments distributed out to the Pacific. So that's actually a big step, where they kind of agree to send these equipments into the Pacific. But that's dependent on the Oceania countries hosting Oceania Championships.
He acknowledges all the hard work and the support of the new executive committee and the importance of developing the sports in the region.
My acknowledgement always goes to, my executive in the Niue Powerlifting, because, they've worked hard to where we're at the moment. And I always like to express that, they've worked hard to get us where we're at now. I also like to acknowledge the International Powerlifting Board, who's also recognized and see the importance of a representative of the Oceania to be on the board.
In a media statement last Thursday, Niue Tourism has confirmed the first sighting of migrant Oceania humpback whales to Niue. This much anticipated annual arrival marks another early start to the season that runs from July to October. Mother Nature seems to be completely in sync, as this was the exact date of the first sighting last year. During this time, pods of humpbacks arrive to calf and nurse their young in the sheltered sanctuary of Niue. Tourism Director Maika Fuhinui Viviani says the arrival of the humpback whales has also been a highly anticipated season for locals and visitors alike, and this familiarity also feels exciting when they are first sighted. The deep, pristine tropical waters of Niue and its rich feeding grounds make Niue an appealing stop for the whales on their epic journey south along what is known as the Humpback Highway. Meanwhile, Niue tourism specialist Sarah Potter took her second solar plunge for Niue in Greenland last week and promoted Niue during this trip. In our final analysis of the status of the Public Service Report for the term 2022 to 2023, most of the departments presented their reports. The Department of Justice, Lands Survey and Community Affairs did not submit their report for this period. Here's more with Esther Pavihi.
The biggest department of the Ministry of Natural Resources is the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. They highlighted some significant achievements during the 2022 to 23 financial year, with a total revenue earned of $1.7 million. For that reported period, revenue exceeded projections by 34%. The Fisheries Division maintains the top revenue-generating arm of the department, from their U.S. treaty fishing rights of $1.5 million. One of the challenges identified by the department was on capacity and the limited qualified personnel for higher management and technical expertise across all the divisions of the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. Meanwhile, some of the other highlights of the department was the completion of major renovations to the export hub at the former fish factory facility at Amanau, and the refrigeration units were all operating. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries budget for this new financial year, starting next month, stands at $1.3 million, a 2.6% increase from the previous financial year. However, revenue projections for the new financial year for this department have also dropped and reduced to $1.39 million. Esther Pavihi for BCN News.
A Matariki event was held last night at the Hakupu Hall. The event is a Maori tradition that signifies new beginnings, hope, reflections, and remembering loved ones that have passed. While speaking at last night's event, New Zealand High Commissioner to Niue, His Excellency Mark Gibb, shared more of the significance of the Matariki event.
Matariki, the word means tiny eyes or eyes of God. So again, to your welcome tonight, we think about the eyes of God looking down on us, but looking down on us in terms of giving us motivation to start our life, because Matariki is also the start of the Maori New Year in New Zealand. And it's not only the calendar year, if you like, but it's also the year for starting the planting and starting a new life and bringing together. And it also, Matariki in New Zealand is really strong about whakapapa, bringing communities together bringing people together.
Hakupu VC Iti Tukuitonga thanked everyone for making time to attend the event and shared the significance of the Stars in Niue tradition.
It's a privilege that you brought this to Hakupu, and I hope that a lot of our Niue people understand what Matariki is and hope that they can learn from it and continue as our Kipule have said. We've used the stars for our journey, fishing, hunting, planting, everything. The moon and the stars go together.
Similar sentiments were shared by Hakupu Member of Parliament Richie Mautama.
It is the way that it's always been, and still encouraging the younger generation to follow through with those traditions in terms of planting the seasons and following the moon at times of planting and times of harvesting with the seasons.
There was a quiz activity for the kids that ended with gazing through the telescope at the stars. And finally tonight, a walking netball tournament focused on raising awareness on autism was held last week at the Paliasi grounds. 7 teams showed up in their colorful attire to support a worthy cause. The tournament was won by the Classics team.
The Niue Island Netball Association, together with the Niue Tolomaki Aoloa Association of the Peoples with Disabilities Organisation, NTAA, ran a rainbow walking netball tournament last Saturday to celebrate 50 years of self-government and also an event to promote awareness of autism. The president of the Niue Island Netball Association, Carol Edwards, says that it was a great success with so much laughter and great fun had by all. Definitely a tournament to remember as we celebrate 50 years of self-government. And the results for the 2024 Walking Netball Championship or Tournament: first place, Classics; in second place, Kalahimu Magic; and third, Kalasiki, Whiniaone Superstars at number 4; fifth, Walking Wounded, Aliutu Mana in 6th place, and Aliutu Unicorns in 7th. The Best Banner Award went to Aliutu. In second place, Kalasiki and the Walking Wounded took out third place in the Best Banner Awards. With the Best Uniform, the Walking Wounded took out the first prize, Aliutu second, and Kalasiki in third. Esther Pavihi for BCN News.
And that's our news bulletin for tonight. You can join us for our Wangahau Bulletin next Tuesday. Until then, good evening.